Hi, Luke. Thanks for sending off that video that lets me know a little bit about yourself. Thank you for sending your video, just kind of outline your thoughts on the information I sent you in the first place. That's pretty much what we want the course to be. It's just kind of a give and take with, what your reflections are conversationally. As long as you're following that, you're good. Yeah, you got a good handle on the scriptures because one of the things you have to understand about the modern slave movement as it pertained to the Americas was that scripture was used to justify slavery. Now, you're right that it was taken out of context. And you have to remember the majority of individuals who hold on to power are using scripture to authoritize and justify the kind of life they want and the kind of labor they want. So people are abusing it. Also, you have a tremendous amount of uneducated individuals. So they're being taught a theory through the scriptures, and so they learn to read scriptures through that particular lens instead of through its original context. I want to highlight one scripture to you. You had mentioned Genesis 9, which was the curse of Ham. And there's a statement in there where of Noah's three brothers, Canaan, the offspring of Ham, is most cursed, and that he would be the slave of his brothers. So here's a little bit of context in the background of what happens here. Is the why of this is, in fact, let me just make sure I'm reading it. I'll pull it right up. In Genesis 9, it talks about how Noah became drunk from the wine he had planted. And it says this, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on their shoulders, and walked backward and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned upward. They did not see their father's nakedness. So Noah throws up, like when he wakes up, he gets angry. He throws down and pronounces an incredibly difficult curse. Like, why would Noah go to this kind of extent that he would not curse Ham, but would actually curse his son and his offspring, his progeny thereafter? Well, there's a couple theories out there, and one of them is that Ham actually raped his father. So the word for no, for see, is used interchangeably throughout the scriptures for a sexual act. And so that's one theory, but probably a bigger theory is that it's the incestuous byproduct of Ham actually raping his mother. And so Canaan, the reason why Canaan is cursed with slavery is because it's out of that union that nothing good can come from. And so that's kind of one of those early statements where they're starting to look at an entire subspecies of people who are subhuman, right? They are less than. Whenever you see slavery in the Bible, especially the Old Testament, it's critical to understand that the Bible is authentic and speaks to the history it was written in. It doesn't speak necessarily to the virtues of that history. So because slavery was the norm of worldwide history, it states things as they are, not as they ought to be necessarily. But when you do a deep dive, especially into the Torah, and you see the standards, the limitations on how long someone can be a slave before they have to be freed. If you sell your child into slavery, you can only do it for 7 years. You have to let them go. If you marry a slave, you have to actually treat them like a spouse, not like a piece of property. Like, those seem draconian to us, but those were revolutionary for their day. And when you get to the New Testament, you're starting to see even crazier, like slaves were nothing in the Roman Empire. They were less than property. And slaves were all of a sudden allowed to enter the church as an equal brother with wealthy patrons, and to be invited to the Lord's Supper. And there's a theory out there that the third pope of Rome, Saint Clement, was actually a slave, and he was pope while he was a slave. So when you get to Paul's writings, especially about how he talks about women, slaves, and children, you cannot underestimate how countercultural that would have been for the imperial standards of the time. So just food for thought. Context matters an enormous amount when it comes to scriptures, and the scriptures are life-giving, and they are directive for proper life and how kind of the thrust of what Jesus pulls people into. But man, if they're twisted and they're used against an uneducated population, they can do great damage, as they did with the slave movement. Section 2 that you're going to look at now is going to deal with after the slave trade has been well-rooted in the States. So look at some of those videos I sent you in Section 2. We're going to look at the Founding Fathers and the hypocrisy. We're going to look at the cotton gin, the importance of that, and why that invention caused slavery to skyrocket, particularly in the South. And Section 3 is going to be kind of the tensions after the Revolutionary War. So like we're going to look at the Founding Fathers in Section 2. And, we're going to look at the Constitution. We're going to look at the Bill of Rights, but how they never lived up to them. Section 3 is after the Revolutionary War, leading up to the Civil War. So to deal with the next about 70 years and how American standards and values, depending on where you lived regionally, were headed for a collision, right? And a lot of the reason why that collision was going to happen was because the South was agricultural. It relied on labor force. The North went industrial. Industrial Revolution hit cities like Boston, New York, Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, Cleveland, and so slavery was no longer needed. And once it was no longer needed, it started to be looked at through a new lens, especially amongst abolitionists. And you're at a Wesleyan school. The Wesleyan Church was the first abolitionist denomination, and we started to take a hard look at the scriptures and say this doesn't compete. And so even when you look at denominations, it's fascinating. Methodism in the North, abolitionist, and then the largest denomination in the United States, the Southern Baptist Conference. Southern Baptist. Why Southern Baptist? Because the Southern Baptist was actually pro-slavery. And so now they're nothing like that today, but it's just funny. You're seeing how this even affects denominational differences in the States. So take a look at the videos, the pictures. There's an assignment at the end of Section 2, and an assignment at the section end of 3. Just do a video like you did before. Can't wait to see it, okay? Until next time.